Hello, my name is Joseph Descans, and I've got over 20 years experience in the tree care industry. I'm also a licensed contractor in the state of California. What I'm going to do in this video is teach you how to trim your own trees. We're going to start with some of the equipment you're going to need to get the job done. To start with, I recommend that you invest in a good pair of gloves. This is a relatively inexpensive investment, and they'll save you a lot of misery from thorns, stickers, bark, insects, and even your own equipment, like this handsaw. This is my 13-inch razor tooth saw made by Corona. This is probably my favorite, most versatile piece of equipment. You can use this from trimming little tiny twigs to medium-sized branches. You don't need a whole lot of expensive equipment to trim your trees. All you need is a couple simple items. Another helpful tool are these hand clippers. These are excellent for doing your fine detailed trimming. They come in both the bypass and the anvil style. This pair has a ratchet mechanism to help you get through those thicker branches. So these are your loppers. There's basically two kinds of loppers. There's the anvil and the bypass. The bypass ones are good because you can cut cleaner, flush to the trunk or along the branch collar. Make a clean cut, but sometimes if you cut things too big, you'll bend them, and then you'll get a sloppy cut. The anvil kind are nice, they can cut good, but they have the anvil here, and sometimes you'll do damage to the branch collar because you'll squish it with the anvil. But I actually do like these better. But the best thing to do is when you're getting this stuff too big, we're going to do damage to the tree, is to go to your handsaw. Pole pruners are one of your most important tools for trimming trees, and there's a variety of different pole pruners to choose from. This is your basic homeowner model made by Corona. You can see it's really easy to work. Pole pruner. It's got an anvil head, which isn't going to cut very close, and it's going to peel, cause the branches to peel on occasion, but it works okay. It's also got these two screws right here where you can attach a saw and you can use it as a pole saw. I'll show you that in just a minute. It's got a telescoping pole, so you can slide it up, tighten it down, and get higher lengths. But it can only go as high as the telescope goes. Here's a professional model. This is what I use. This head is made by Marvin. It's a lot higher quality construction. It's stronger. You can tell it's got a heavier spring. And it's a bypass head, so you can get right next to the tree. You can make really clean cuts instead of leaving stubs. And we'll see the difference of that in just a second. It's made of, this particular pole is aluminum, so it's really lightweight. And instead of having a telescoping pole, you just clip this together, like so. And you can put as many of these extensions on as you can handle, as long as you got a long enough string. The only drawback to these is most professionals won't use aluminum because they work around power lines. And so you need a fiberglass pole. The drawback to fiberglass is sometimes you'll get splinters in your hands, and also they're a little bit heavier than the aluminum. But if you're working around power lines, which you shouldn't be, you need the fiberglass. Pole saws are great for trimming things too big for the pole pruner, like palm seeds. Pole pruners are a smart, long-term investment. These people have been using this pole pruner and pole saw to trim these birds of paradise for 18 years. Here are a few items you may want for head protection. A hard hat. I like one with a shield and ear protection. There are a variety of masks to protect your eyes, nose, and mouth from dust and debris. Before working on a tree, it's important to identify the tree's needs and your goals for trimming it. Start by examining the tree. Is it healthy? If the leaves are infested, discolored, or eaten, you should consult an expert before you start cutting. Are the roots breaking up sidewalks or other structures like the foundation of your house? You may need to cut the tree down. Are the branches rubbing against a house or wires or hanging over the fence? Is it too shady for the lawn or other plants? Is it blocking anyone's view? What are your long-term expectations of the tree, and how do you expect to trim it to fulfill them? When trimming your tree, you start by cutting out the stubs, deadwood, suckers, and crossovers. This is an excellent example of what happens when you leave a stub on the tree. This stub has died and it's deadwood. The termites have moved in. This is little residue from termites, and you can also see the ants are in there. This stub is a gateway for all kinds of problems in your trees. This whole branch is dead. You can see, if you're up close, all these little holes in there from bugs, termites, all kinds of insects being in here. You don't want to leave these on your trees. When you find them, you cut them off. Here I'm cutting out all the small deadwood out of the inside of this ficus tree. This sucker is easily identified by a number of things. 1, it's growing off the trunk of the tree down here. 2, it's more green than the trunk, so it's a different color. 3, it's got these big spikes on it that aren't on the rest of the tree. And 4, it has no fruit on it. Crossover branches are branches that are touching each other and rubbing against each other in the wind. Basically, as you can see, the bark is totally worn off of this branch that was crossing over another branch. This invites insects and disease and generally produces an unhealthy tree. You can see the difference between this branch and this branch. This is a healthy branch. This one's all worn. Usually you cut off all crossover branches, but this one takes up a big section of the tree. If we were to cut it off, it would ruin the shape of the tree. So in this case, we're going to leave it. When removing branches, it's important to cut along the branch collar. This is found where the secondary branch emerges from the larger branch or trunk. The objective is to cut as close to the branch collar as possible without actually touching it. This ensures the proper healing of the cut. The branch collar is often easily identified by wrinkles at the branch junction or a color change in the offshoot branch. But if these are absent, you can approximate. When you just cut a branch like this, it can peel. What you do is make a cut like that. Make a cut a little bit higher. Then when it peels, it'll break off there. We're going to use the 3-step method to ensure a proper cut on this branch. What you do is you make an undercut, then you make the overcut. That keeps it from peeling all the way back. Put that branch off the side, and then you find the collar and cut right on the edge of the collar. That way the tree heals properly. Lacing, or thinning, is to trim a tree so the sun can reach every leaf and the wind can blow through. The industry standard is to cut about 30% of the foliage, and the object is to do this evenly throughout the tree. Everyone does this different according to their own style and preference. When I lace a tree, I start by trimming the underside of the branches and eliminating the droop. The branch will often rise up when you do this. Then I look for thick spots and cut growth out of the middle to open them up to sunlight. Be careful to save some inside branches, because they're the only ones photosynthesizing on hot days. What you don't want to do is strip the branch all the way out to the tip. What this does is puts a whole bunch of weight out on the end and makes the tree, the branch, more susceptible to breaking. Also, what it does is it promotes sucker growth on the inside of the tree. If you lace out a tree properly, It inhibits sucker growth and encourages the growth of main branches. What you want to do when you're tipping a branch is cut it back to the place where another branch comes out. That way, you're hiding your cuts and it encourages the growth of this branch. This is called heading. This is going to create suckers, it's going to be ugly, and it's unhealthy for the tree. The inside of this tree has been laced. Now it's ready to be shaped. Shaping is to trim the outside of the tree into the shape you want it. This is usually done with a pole pruner. It's a good idea to continually back up, circle the tree, and inspect your work. That way it won't come out lopsided. Don't take too much off at the beginning. You'll probably have to circle your tree a few times before you get it right. As you get to the higher branches, just add more extensions to your pole pruner. On bigger trees, you may have to do the top through the inside. As you can see, this tree looks really nice. All I used was a handsaw and the pole pruner. All you need is some time, patience, and a little know-how, and you can do it too. When trimming fruit trees, you initially follow the same procedure as with trimming any other tree. You look for all the stubs, the dead wood, and the suckers. Then you move into the crossovers that are going to be causing wounds, and the crowded branches that are going to be impeding photosynthesis. We're going to use this apricot tree for an example. It's only a few years old, but somebody's already been hacking on it. It's important to cut all the sucker branches out of your tree. They usually grow along the tops of the stems or from the base of the trunk. They're also discolored, and oftentimes they'll have thorns on them that aren't on the rest of the tree. These branches take the energy away from producing fruit. When you cut them all out, the tree can put all its energy into producing big, healthy fruit. Okay. Who's ever worked on this tree already went through and cut off all the sucker branches. But they left all these stubs, which is very unhealthy for the tree. Stubs are a gateway for termites and other bugs. They rot and they sprout suckers. Generally, you don't want any stubs left on your tree. You can usually tell the dead wood from the green wood through the color difference. But if you have any doubt, all you have to do is scrape the branch. If it's green on the inside, it's alive. If it's brown, then it's dead. The dead branches are also brittle. After doing the initial trim, you then go on to do the specialized pruning that helps the tree produce healthy fruit. You do this by cutting about 1/3 off the end of every branch. Some trees produce fruit on the new wood, and some trees produce fruit on the old wood. If you cut about 1/3 off every branch, this covers them all. This may seem a bit tedious, but it's worth it in the end when you've got big, healthy fruit when harvest time comes. You need to trim fruit tree branches very carefully. If you cut them too far out like this, they'll bleed and sprout suckers, or this will be a deadwood. If you cut them too close, you'll injure the bud. What you want to do is cut them about 1/4 inch from the bud, 45-degree angle. That's perfect. Some of these smaller spurs you shouldn't trim at all because they only have 1 or 2 buds on them, and if you trim them, they won't produce any fruit at all. But on some of the longer ones, you might want to cut closer to half. This apricot tree has been neglected for several years, but it's in pretty good health. It has very little deadwood and no suckers, but it does have a lot of crossover branches and it needs to be reduced in size. Branches that cross through the tree, like this one, need to be removed. When you're cutting back a main branch, there's no branch collar to cut along, so you just take it back to a secondary branch. Trimming your fruit tree properly can make all the difference in the world between having good fruit, bad fruit, or no fruit. Some trees will produce lots of small or poor quality fruit. By trimming these trees, you'll increase the size and the quality of the fruit. Some trees won't produce any fruit at all unless they're trimmed. These trees need to be trimmed annually if you're going to have any harvest at all. Fruit tree trimming is a very exact science, and it's good to know the differences in the trees you're trimming. For instance, this apricot tree bears fruit every other year on the previous year's growth. If you want to know the specifics about the trees you're trimming, I suggest you consult other sources. Trees that lose their leaves need to be trimmed when they're dormant. Because this peach tree is already sprouted, it's too late to trim it this season. To trim it now, it would probably bleed and could even kill the tree. If you have any questions about when to trim the trees in your area, call someone at your local nursery. Citrus trees are pretty low maintenance. Obviously this tree needs a lot of deadwood cut out of it, but generally the only time you need to trim a citrus tree is when the branches are overladen and you need to trim the ends off so they don't break from the weight of the fruit. There's dozens of different kinds of fruit trees, and there's a specialized way to trim nearly every single one of them. What I've shown you today is a general technique that works on nearly all of them. You may have also inherited a fruit tree that's old and not producing very good fruit, or no fruit at all. Have patience with it. After a few years of trimming, fertilization, and water, it may turn out to be an excellent producer. It's important to make proper cuts because of compartmentalization. Trees don't heal the way people do. They compartmentalize. That means if there's an injured or dead area, they block it off from the rest of the tree. When cuts are made properly, this area is relatively small. When improper cuts are made, this area increases and can be detrimental to the health of the tree. I recently cut down this eucalyptus tree that was topped before. You can see that the inside is rotting out. This produces a sickly tree that will break easily during a storm. You won't be topping trees yourself, but this is a good thing to know when you're hiring a professional. This is why you don't want to top a tree. As you can see, this tree was topped right here before. Instead of having one main strong branch, these 3 sucker branches sprouted out. These sucker branches are weaker than the original branch, and it's going to produce more sail on the tree. The tree is going to be thicker. They're not going to get as much sunlight to the inside. It's overall just a bad thing to do, so you want to avoid it as much as possible. So now you've successfully trimmed a bunch of smaller trees around your yard, but you have a couple bigger ones that you can't handle and you need to call a professional. You can either get someone out of the phone book, or it's even better to get a referral from one of your neighbors. When you call them, here's a few things to ask for. 1. Do they have a contractor's license? 2. Are they certified? 3. Are they insured? And 4. How much experience do they have in your area? Experience is probably the most important factor. There's a few things you want to consider when you're planting trees. For instance, this Ficus benjamina is fine right now as it is, and if they keep it small, they're not going to have any problems. But these trees are notorious for the root systems which tear up cement and concrete work. If you want a tree like this to grow up into a big tree, you need to plant it somewhere where it's got lots of room to grow. These rubber tree roots are growing under this walkway and pushing it up. The roots from this tree are actually ruining this whole deck area, and they're going to have it redone. This was a nice, cute little rubber tree when they planted it 25 years ago. But when they planted it, they should have considered what the root system was going to do. They should have either kept the roots cut, planted another tree, or given the tree more room to grow by planting it somewhere else. On baby trees, like this avocado, it's important to leave these little branches on the trunk until the tree is well established, because they feed it and guarantee it'll be healthy. Pruning knives are used for stripping palm trees. There's usually a clearly defined line that goes all the way around the tree for each shuck. You do this about every inch all the way up. You can see how much nicer this makes your tree look. Once you start getting into the pink shucks, that's when you need to stop. This also works for bird of paradise. You need to make sure you have a sharpening stone with you, because you want your blade extremely sharp. When you're trimming your trees, you need to respect the wildlife. This bird's nest is empty, but some birds' nests holds the eggs or the chicks of endangered species. You can get in big trouble for ruining their homes, so you need to be careful. It's important to keep your trees away from the roof. During high winds and storms, they can brush against the roof and cause damage both to the roof and the tree. This bird of paradise is also a freeway for rats. The people have been hearing the rats run around the roof at night, and this is how they get up there, by the bird of paradise. When I was working at this particular house about 7 or 8 years ago, I was trimming one of these birds of paradise, working over my head from a ladder, and a rat jumped out, ran down my head and my back, and took off. I screamed, and the lady thought that I'd fallen off the ladder, but I hadn't. It was only a rat running down my back. So, you want to keep your trees clean so that you don't have rats' nests, and you want to keep them away from the roof. When you're working around your house, you have to be careful of different obstacles. Here we have some pool equipment. We have to be careful that we don't smash. There you go. This trash can is covering some delicate flowers. It's important to keep your tools sharp. With these bypass pruners, you use a flat file and only sharpen the outside edge of the blade. This ensures a good clean cut. You can keep your pruners lubricated with oil. When trimming your trees, it's important to recognize your limits. Professionals use all the modern tools and safety equipment when tackling big jobs. What may be a very difficult and dangerous job for you could be a simple task for a trained arborist. Leave it to him. Chainsaws are excellent pieces of equipment for cutting through branches quickly, but they can also cut through your arm or your leg or other parts of your body quickly also, so you need to be very careful when working with them. The most important thing to do is remember not to use the tip. When you're using the tip of the chainsaw, you're in danger of having the saw kick back and hit you in the arm or face or wherever. What you want to do is use this part of the saw. Keep both hands on the chainsaw at all times. Here's a few tips about maintaining your chainsaw. Chainsaws use a gas-oil mix. It's best to use super unleaded gas without alcohol, like you find at a Chevron or a 76 station. You can use any kind of motor oil to lubricate the bar, but chainsaw bar oil is best because it sticks to the bar better. I like to poke a little hole in the seal to control the oil flow. The easiest way to sharpen a chain is to use a hand file. Find the appropriate size and follow the contour of the tooth. When you finish, the tooth face should shine, and having a tiny burr come off the top is a good sign it's sharp. If the top of the tooth is rounded and scarred from hitting rocks or cement, you should take it to the sharpening shop. The chain should be snug to the bar, but roll easily with one hand. Remember to wear gloves while doing this. It is also important to clean your air filter regularly to keep your saw running smoothly. I use an air tank, but you can use water. But be careful not to put the filter back in the saw wet and get water in the engine. It's a good idea to keep your chainsaw clean. but the sap from some trees and plants, like palms and yuccas, will actually eat the metal, and you should clean your saw thoroughly immediately after cutting these. To get rid of your debris, you can either put it in a trash can or put it in bundles for the trash men to take away. Or you can load it up in your truck. If you do that, you need to have it tarped down really good so nothing flies off. The highway patrol is also going to want to see your license plate and your lights. If there's more debris than you can handle, you can have someone haul it away or chip it. Tree trimming is an art. If you're sensitive to its needs, the tree will actually determine how it should be trimmed, and you will just follow its lead. You want to work with the tree and not against it. When you start on your first tree, take your time. Think about what you're doing. Reflect on the principles taught in this video, and you can create a masterpiece.
First thing in this morning, Lord, my thoughts they come to you. Directed at your wonder, the glory, the ways that surround you. When I look across the valley, the open plain,